Keir Starmer is sending a strong message to Russia after he made a rare visit to a nuclear-armed submarine. The submarine was returning to base after spending months patrolling the seas. Armed Forces Minister Luke Pollard joins me now. Great to have you with us this morning, Minister. Is the Prime Minister, after visiting that submarine and meeting the sailors on board, has he got a renewed commitment, focus, respect for the importance of our nuclear deterrent? I guess I ask it from the perspective of a party that hasn't always been 100% behind it.
No, we've been very clear that we have a very strong support for our nuclear deterrent and for our armed forces. The submariners that serve on our nuclear submarines protect our nation every single day. They might not always appear in the headlines as they are today, but every single day there's a nuclear armed submarine somewhere in the North Atlantic guaranteeing our national security. It's the reason why today the Prime Minister will also be in Barrow laying the keel on our latest nuclear submarine, HMS Dreadnought. This is the next generation of submarines that will carry our nuclear deterrent, keeping us safe as a nation for decades to come, as well as creating enormous numbers of jobs, not just in Cumbria, but right across the country as well.
When will the Dreadnought class of submarines be online? And how do you as a government make sure the cost, like in so many infrastructure and big spending projects, but particularly, if we look at the aircraft carriers that we had in the last couple of years, that the cost doesn't snowball, there aren't delays, there aren't problems?
No, you're absolutely right. The first Dreadnought-class submarine, HMS Dreadnought, will be in service in the early 2030s. In the meantime, we are continuing to support our existing Vanguard-class submarines, not only making sure that our people who serve on those submarines, but the people who service them and keep them up, including in the constituency that I represent in Plymouth, are supported as well. Because as a government, we've given a triple lock commitment to our nuclear submarines. Firstly, that we will ensure a continuing at-sea nuclear deterrent. Secondly, that we will build 4 new submarines to replace the ageing fleet that we have at the moment. And thirdly, that we'll commit to any upgrades that are required to keep this nuclear deterrent as a continuing nuclear deterrent, because that is what protects our security. And it is also what deters Putin's aggression, not just against the UK, but against our NATO allies as well, because the United Kingdom is the only European NATO member that dedicates and commits our nuclear deterrent to protection of the entire alliance. It's the underpinning of our European and Atlantic security. And it's for that reason that the investment that we're making in our new nuclear submarines is not only good for UK industry, good for growth and job creation, it's also good to keep our European alliance together and deter any future Russian aggression.
A lot of people wondered whether more EU spending on defence would also potentially be good for the UK defence industry and jobs related to it. It sounds like the EU defence budget will exclude any spending outside of the EU. That's a pretty big blow from what was expected over the last weeks and months, isn't it?
No, I think this is as expected, but it's part of a broader conversation. So the Prime Minister has been clear that we expect all our European partners to step up on defence, spending more on defence, being more interoperable, committing more forces to our collective defence, something that the United Kingdom has done by increasing our own defence spending. Earlier this week, the Defence Secretary and the Foreign Secretary met High Commissioner Kallas of the European Union to talk about our EU Security Pact, a manifesto commitment that we made in the general election last year to secure a closer defence and security arrangement with our closest European allies. Now, that discussion was positive, but the Europeans are doing exactly what we have asked them to do. We've asked them to step up, and they are. And today, not only is the UK and some of our closest NATO allies in our permanent joint headquarters in Northwood in London, but we're looking at how we can plan a force to support our friends in Ukraine, not just as the United Kingdom, but as 30 nations coming together, stepping up our support to secure the peace after any peace deal in Ukraine. Now, this, I think, is a clear sign of UK leadership, but we're doing that alongside our French friends co-leading this effort.
That's headline spending, and obviously those countries can spend it how they see fit. But you're saying that your expectation always was that not a penny of the 150 billion euros of mooted EU defence spending would likely be spent on UK companies, and we're fine with that?
Well, we appreciate at the moment, having left the European Union, that it will be for the European Union to make some decisions for its own members. But we also know that as nearly every European Union member state is part of NATO, that a stepping up of defence spending, securing our collective defence via NATO is also important. Now, we know that our British defence companies have footprints and businesses right across the European Union. They benefit from increased defence spending, as indeed will the export partnerships that we're already undertaking with many of our European Union friends. There's a dialogue that is taking place between Britain and the EU to reset our relations, something again we committed to do in our manifesto. That's already showing progress, and I think we can see that from the way that UK leadership has been so welcomed over Ukraine and on defence matters in recent months. But we're continuing the conversations around an EU defence and security pact, as well as supporting our efforts, not just for the United Kingdom to spend more on defence, but to support our European friends doing exactly the same.
Wanted to ask you as well about your latest views on the various phone calls that President Trump has had in the last couple of days, President Putin, then President Zelensky, and specifically the suggestion of the US running Ukraine's power plants. Is that a clever idea to sort of, in a stealthy way, have a security guarantee in effect, if not in name?
Well, the bit that I take from the calls is that the Ukraine and the United States are closer than ever on their positions, strongly supporting each other. Now, the ball is really in Russia's court here. They're the ones that aren't seeking an immediate ceasefire. They're the ones who are seeking to continue this war. Now, we've been very clear that Ukraine needs to be at the very heart of any negotiations. That is what is taking place alongside our US friends at this point. But we've also been clear that to get a lasting peace, we need to keep Ukraine in the fight today. That's why the United Kingdom and our allies, including the United States, are continuing the flow of kit and equipment to Ukraine so they can continue to deter and fight off against that illegal Russian invasion. But it's really now for President Putin. The ball is in his court. He can show the world that he's serious about peace, or he can continue to frustrate efforts and delay it, hoping that any delay will mean he'll capture more of Ukraine. We are very clear. We have a full, strong support for our friends in Ukraine, and that is what we're seeing today with a multinational effort coming together, not just to keep them in the fight today, but to secure a peace if that comes.
And just finally, Minister, clearly cuts to welfare spending announced yesterday, following cuts to foreign aid spending recently to help fund a boost in defence spending. And we're expecting either tax increases or further spending cuts next week in the spring statement. Are you now government of the centre-right?
No, I don't think so. And it's wrong for me to speculate what might be in the spring statement next week. But we've been very clear that by taking the difficult decision to reduce international aid spending, we're moving that money to defence. The changes that we are seeking to make to welfare is not to fund defence spending, it's to help people back into work. We know that there has been a big increase in the number of people out of work, but when we've got 1 in 8 young people claiming disability benefit, that is a crisis for our nation. That's why Liz Kendall, the Work and Pensions Secretary, has set out plans to support more disabled people back into work. I know as a constituency MP that the disabled people that come to my surgery want support to go back into work, but they haven't always been able to access that from the job centre. That's why the £1 billion extra funding that Liz Kendall announced this week will help more people access work. Yes, that will hopefully bring down the total spend on this, but most importantly, it will help disabled people have the confidence to try work, hopefully succeed in it, with a new right to try. So if they give work a go, if they try to take the effort to get off disability support, they'll be able to keep that and not face a cliff edge as they do under the current system. So this really is about supporting disabled people back into work. That helps our economy. Most importantly, it helps the dignity, respect and finances of those individuals involved.
Luke Pollard, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.